Kristen, why don't you be the host in Johnny Carson style, and you introduce us.
Okay. So guys, thanks for joining. We always appreciate you guys listening in on these things. So we have Dr. Tom Bradicich, VP and GM IoT servers and systems, and Mike Tennefoss. Mike, remind me of your title, I apologize. Aruba?
Vice President of Partnerships.
Okay. VP of Partnerships for Aruba. So we kind of wanted to start the discussion around Edgeline, converged edge systems, two products that we actually announced in June. We brought them so you could kind of see them up close. The whole portion of intelligent edge and security with Aruba. Mike is obviously responsible with Aruba and ClearPass discussion. So we just really wanted to start the discussion with that and just see where the discussion goes. So if you guys have questions, or Dr. Tom or Mike, if you want to sort of go from there, we'll just hit it off. Okay?
Hey, thank you, Kristen, and it's a pleasure to be here with my colleague Mike, who has deep expertise in connectivity, wireless, access points, security associated with connecting the things. And then, as you may know, I'm representing the converged system, which is a brand new product category we created. I would like to ask, are we being broadcast live on Periscope by anyone? You are. That's great. That's terrific. Just want to make sure we all knew that. And secondly, how would we access that?
You can go to geeksroom.com or find on Twitter or Facebook the account for Geeksroom. And we have the link in there.
How do you spell it?
Geeks Rooms.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Kristen to get that from you, so we wouldn't spend time with me fumbling. But I would like you to please send it here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Just whatever the link is, and then hit send. Okay. So we got that covered, and the way I think we'll run this format is primarily have you ask us questions, and we'll respond. But I think Mike would agree. We just want to say an opening introductory remark. And why don't you start, Mike? You've got a microphone there, and then I'll say a remark, and then we can talk.
Yeah,
Portray.
There we go. Good. So I'm Mike Tennefoss. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships for Aruba. Been at Aruba for about 10 years. Before that, I had 23 years in process factory and building automation, and field of Internet of Things very close to my heart, as is networking. One of the fundamental issues that Aruba is dealing with is that the Internet of Things is fundamentally untrustworthy. The Internet of Things is fundamentally untrustworthy. And one of the reasons for that is because the people that design the machines are great at making something run for 100 years, but they have very little cybersecurity experience. And so one of the goals of Aruba is to assert trust on these devices, which is a big challenge, since many of the legacy IoT devices maybe have 8-bit microprocessors and no memory, they can't encrypt, they can't authenticate. So how do you address them when a customer isn't about to replace it? So that's one of the objectives of Aruba's Connect and Protect architecture. And today we announced the IoT device profiler, the purpose of which is to identify which IoT devices are on your network. That's the starting point for remediation of security and ensuring that we have a trustworthy Internet of Things. Fabulous. So Vinay Anand manages the Aruba ClearPass products, and he's now joined us here.
Yes, let me just say, as we introduce Vinay Anand, Vinay has deep expertise in the security dimension that Michael was describing. So if you have trust issues with the Internet of Things, this man will help you with them.
Is he setting me up for something?
Yes, well, you want to introduce your product and who the heck you are? Yeah. Okay, we're still trying to get the logistics ready. So why don't I just take over, and then we'll have Vinay, and I'll explain myself. I'm Tom Bradicich, and I have a VP and GM responsibility for a server line that's not really a topic here, but in addition to that, we've been able to leverage some of the compute technologies, storage, and management technologies and build another line expressly designed for the IoT edge, which we aptly named Edgeline. That's a brand name, and before me, my colleague and I never miss a chance to market our products. So before me, we have the Edgeline 4000, the Edgeline 1000, the first entrance into this new product category that we call converged edge systems. Why do we call it converged? Because we take proven HPE compute and storage and systems management, which is quite famous. I used to compete with it, and I would validate that it's quite good. The ILO technology and the Systems Insight Manager. We take that, but we combine it with controls technologies and data acquisition. And some of you may not know much about that, but that's the operational technology world. And therefore, you need data acquisition to touch things at high speed. The Aruba technology is data acquisition in the sense it can touch things through wireless at somewhat lower speeds. But when you have to do wired acquisition of sensors on robotic arms, perhaps, and maybe turbines, and get precision data acquisition. Second thing is controlling. We have to activate the robot arm. We have to control the autonomous automobile. So these technologies are outside the IT world. They're in the OT world, or the engineering operations world. But we've combined them with, the first step is a partnership with National Instruments, a OT leader in the world, operations technology. We put data acquisition and control systems right inside these boxes along next to our own, and created the effect of OT combining with IT. And we like to highlight that point because we're a first mover in seeking to do that. And we will continue to do that, and I hope we can answer some questions with respect to what other controls and data acquisition will you combine with your deep computing. What do I mean by deep computing? Up to 64 Xeon server class cores at the edge. So let me emphasize, this is not an Atom processor. Nothing wrong with it, but that's low performing. It is not an ARM core. It is not a proprietary switch or router processor. That isn't made to do deep analytics stacks to gain insight and prognostics and machine learning. And those are the things that we're excited about. And today we're announcing several Aruba products, which we'll talk about, as also Edgeline solution stacks with third parties, such as PTC, AT&T, OSI Soft, and National Instruments, are all joining their software with this particular hardware platform. So thank you for being here. That's my story, and may I please turn it over to
Thanks, Tom.
Vinay.
I'm Vinay Anand. I run the ClearPass business. How many of you were there at the keynote today? You guys were there, right? Just a few. So you saw some of the demos they showed. So for those of you who don't know, for those of you who don't know what ClearPass is, this is a policy platform for network admission control. So we are able to detect every device that connects to the network, and at connection time, we validate the device, we authenticate its connection, and we can apply a policy. Based on the device credentials and the type of device that's connecting and the user that's associated with the device, we can enforce a policy that allows either conditional access to the device to corporate assets, full access, push the device to a specific VLAN, or we can even terminate the connection. We can turn off the switchboard. So there are various things we can do. A very granular policy platform that allows the IT admins to define policies based on device type, location, the status of the device, the posture of the device, who is connecting on it, all kinds of things. We can also enforce dual factor authentication if necessary. So if you're connecting from a remote site or from a location that's not secure, you will be asked to enter a second factor or a third factor. We integrate with a number of solutions in the network. We have over 100 integrations with the firewalls, with the MDM vendors like AirWatch and Mobile Iron, with the SIM vendors like ArcSight, Splunk, and others, with endpoint security, Intel EPO, and a bunch of others, ServiceNow, trouble ticketing tools. So we create end-to-end workflows. So as we see authentication requests coming in and an enforcement action we have to take, we can also take input from other solutions in the network that will tell us what to do. So if a firewall is seeing a particular IP address misbehaving, the firewall can send us a signal saying quarantine this IP address, or turn off the port for that IP address so that they are kicked off the network. So multiple things we can do there. And today we just introduced a new product called the Universal Profiler, which is aimed towards discovering and profiling all devices in your network, largely focused on IoT. As more and more devices show up on the network, we are able to discover them and profile them and dashboard their presence in the network. So that's the product we introduced today. We just launched it this afternoon. Thanks.
Let me say, we were talking, another colleague joined us, my friend Pete Murray, and he is a native here in the UK. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I really appreciate it. I apologize, I was just coming from a video shoot across the way for being late. My name is Pete Murray. I look after our OEM program worldwide, and I also look after our IoT go-to-market plan for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. The reason why I'm joining is this is absolutely an exciting area for us. And our OEM program, we work with hundreds and hundreds of operational technology companies who obviously are very, very interested in IoT and the benefits it can bring to their customers today. So pleasure to be with you, and apologies for being a little bit late.
Kick us off.
Yeah, I just thought I'd get the ball rolling with something that was going through my head when you were speaking, Vinay. And it's really about securing what used to be called the industrial internet, and even before that, M2M communications. A lot of that, as you said, is very naive about security. So from what you said, your approach is very much to put is to superimpose identity on the individual devices, although I may have misunderstood that. Another approach is a kind of a gateway approach where you effectively keep the shop floor area, for example, secure and replicate a ghost of each device to a gateway device, which is where the security starts. So I just wondered, what you see as the interaction between different approaches in that way.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us, and all of you, and thank you for being here. We appreciate you. We hope it's all you can eat and all you can drink, so thank you. And why don't we just open up to questions? And do we have a roving mic? Or can somebody just yell? Yeah. I think that gentleman.
So good question. Let me call out the difference between the two use cases. One is you're talking about devices that are directly connected to the IP network, that are native on the network. And the second instance you're talking about is they may be they may be speaking IP, may not be, but they're all behind a gateway. So they are isolated in their own little pocket. Is that correct? Okay, so the security implications in both cases, unless the gateway is enforcing very strong security itself, and usually these gateways are more configuration gateways, not security gateways. What happens is if any of these devices get compromised, and we are seeing this in the last 2 months with the Mirai botnet, which I'm sure most of you know what I'm speaking about, right? There are 3 instances already. They took down the DNS server, one of the root DNS servers in the US. They took down one of those very popular websites. And yesterday, or was it day before, there was a outage in Germany, similar Mirai botnet driven, where they took down tens of thousands of home routers, broadband routers. So in each of these cases, the challenge here is those IoT devices, unless you know what they are supposed to do and you track their behavior, if they start doing things they're not supposed to do, it's very difficult to block them. So this is where behavioral analytics comes in. So now what ClearPass does, we don't go that far into the behavioral part yet. We partner with other vendors to do that for us. What ClearPass does is it's able to profile the device, discover it first of all. The first thing, the most challenging thing is knowing what's on your network. And the profiler does that very effectively. And once we discover all the devices in the network, we are able to apply a policy if the devices start misbehaving. Now, that portion, detecting when they are misbehaving, this is where we depend on our ecosystem partners to give us that information. Because devices are distributed all over the network, they are probably not even all communicating through one egress point. So you can't effectively track all behavior sitting in one place. Now we look at NetFlow, we look at syslogs, so we get a lot of information. But many of these devices probably don't even talk native IP, or maybe a lot of their communication is happening on other protocols. So this is where we depend on our ecosystem partners that will give us this information. They'll track behavior, and when they see a device misbehaving, they're able to send us an alert, and we can take enforcement actions. Now, if these devices are within the corporate IP network and they're speaking IP, and we are able to look at their logs, then we can, within ClearPass, we can track their behavior ourselves. So it's a hybrid opportunity for us. Some of it we do ourselves, some of it we work with ecosystem partners.
Thanks. Let me talk a little bit more about legacy devices, which are running all manner of different protocol. There are more than 140 different building and factory automation protocols and more than 30 different standards for physical layers for control networks. I personally, by the way, don't like the term IoT. I prefer calling them control networks because that's really what they are. So many of these legacy devices are actually installed before the advent of the internet itself, and they're running our power infrastructure and our water and wastewater systems and so on. There's no chance that they're going to be removed and replaced in the near term. So if we're going to assert trust on those devices, we have to find a way of protecting what's already installed. So one way of doing that is to use behavioral analytics to look at traffic patterns of those devices. The source, the destination, packet size, etc. If you get attacked by something like Stuxnet, where devices are talking to other devices that they're not supposed to, but it's shielded from the rest of the world, if you were to do traffic analysis on those kinds of communication, you would at least be able to flag that there's something anomalous. You wouldn't be able to prevent them from talking, but you could raise an alert. And at that point, you could decide, do I want to shut down the process, which you might not want to because that could have its own issues, but you could go and investigate the device. The other way is to work with partners like GE WorldTech that actually have solutions for reading the protocols themselves and looking at the communication of those protocols and saying, there are communications going on here that shouldn't be going on. So simple traffic analysis, more detailed protocol analysis are two ways to deal with legacy devices that are beyond the reach of IT security solutions like ClearPass.
I actually was wondering about the hardware architecture. What's the compute layer particularly?
I'm sorry, are you referring to these products or
Within the, yeah.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you for asking. I can talk all day about them. But let me answer directly, please. The compute dimension, which is one of 6 things that we converge in the box, is Intel Xeon architecture. If you don't know what that is, I think you all know about Intel, but the Xeon is their server class line. This is a lower energy version for obvious reasons, because these things are out at the edge, they're not in the data center. And so we were able to pack so much of that because, very frankly, that's what we're good at HPE, compute. In fact, we're number 1 in the data center cloud. So simply, our strategy is to shift it out of there and run it at the edge. And on that compute dimension, there are 7 reasons to do that. It's kind of interesting. 7 reasons to compute at the edge. And now you're thinking, oh, am I going to give you a lecture on 7? Let me repeat them real fast. Well, one of them is very obvious, latency. Do it at the edge, accelerate your insight. You don't have to go back to the cloud and use a network that could be latency filled, right? It's that simple. And we have a lot of applications, one you may have seen on stage, where immediate response and latency is not tolerable. However, that's not true for everything. And the notion of sensor to cloud is a very big deal today. Number 2 is bandwidth. Now, you may be able to tolerate latency, but you don't have the bandwidth for the big data that's at the edge that we're collecting. And a corollary is the IoT presents a big data problem, a specific type of problem, big analog data, because the data of the things in the IoT is almost always analog sourced. Location, temperature, pressure, weather types, things, voltage, current, etc. It's almost all analog that has to be converted. All right, I only gave you 2 of 7. The third one is cost. Even if you have the bandwidth, I had a customer, and by the way, I didn't make up these 7, I got them from customers. I had a customer say, I don't have a latency issue, I don't have a a bandwidth issue, but I just don't want to pay for using the bandwidth. Right? I want to use it for something more mission critical or more whatever. And then we move on to security. We just talked about that. If you don't send the data to the cloud across the room or state, or the room isn't as bad of an issue, of course, but you leave the campus, you leave the state, you leave the country, it's vulnerable. Now, President Ronald Reagan had the best security, or among the best security in the world. And when he went out, he got shot. Now, I don't bring this up for fun. I just bring this up to let you know when you go out, there's a vulnerability. Now, I'm sitting next to the greatest security in the world, right here. But this is just a fact. When you go out, it's more vulnerable, right? So, and therefore, there are issues where even the best security, which our company has, it's not allowed to leave. That's just 4, of 7. The other one is simply the non-hostile corruption of data. The more it goes through networks and routers and switches, bits flip, packets gets dropped. A 6th one is the duplication. If you collect all the big data at the edge and you got to store it again when you go to the cloud, there's a level of duplication, not 100%, but there's a level of duplication and the reliability, associated with that. I think I did 6. What's number 7? Number 7 I learned a while back right here in the great UK. A big engine manufacturer told me, none of those 6 matter. But I have a corporate policy that says I cannot send my data beyond the manufacturing floor. And I also have a government policy that we call that data sovereignty, right? Policy. So I came up with 7. Maybe there's 8. Maybe there's more. And the reason I like 7 is because if you don't agree with 2 or 3 of them, at least I got 4 to make the case, and build why we compute at the edge here.
I just wanted to add one additional double click on the security, which is we often think of security being from the outside in, encryption, authentication, and so on. But these devices also have security from the inside out. So secure boot, US created BIOS in the system, so that if an infection attempts to get into the operating system, there are security measures inside of the Edgeline products to detect and protect against that as well. So, because even if you're at home, you can have an insider threat.
I imagine there's some way to actually store the data before it gets transmitted, if it gets transmitted, where it ends up going.
The edge, and again, the edge is everywhere. That's not there are 6 things in here. That's our strategy. There's really 7, but if I use 7 and then to 7 reasons, you get the 7s confused. But
I get confused.
We're gonna stay. Yeah, I didn't mean you personally, sir, but but one of the things is scalable storage. It's SSD. This baby can hold up to 40 terabytes. This one up to 12 terabytes. So that's a lot of storage. So again, you see we're shifting parts of the data center over there.
Where they're most appropriate.
Yeah, and for the 7 reasons. That's why we're doing it as well. So it's really natural to step up to this leadership idea. We're the best in the data center, but the world's getting smarter. So we're going to go out. Yeah, and now one of the other 6 things that we built in here is something that I'm going to just be personal here. I competed with. I had a career at IBM. The number one thing I competed with the HP company is the world famous ILO, integrated lights out technology, combined with the software, which originally came from Compaq, called System Manager, called Insight Manager. Then it became System Insight Manager. Now it has graduated to our OneView branding. That technology is amazing for data center management. Without exaggeration, hundreds of thousands, up to 1 million of these ILO integrated lights out devices are shipped a year. And they're managing PCs and they're managing servers all over the world. Well, what's more remote than the edge? So again, we have this asset that is, by the way, battle hardened, therefore reduced risk, that we can move out to the edge. And then here's what happens. A company, pick any company, I got to build an IoT infrastructure. I already have an IT infrastructure. I'm already either familiar with HPE's ILO, or I've heard about it, right? Or I'm using it, right? So the chances of an IT person knowing about it or using it are extremely high. The look on their face when you tell them, well, you'll have that same interface, that same management interface out at the edge, so you can manage your data center, your cloud, as well as the edge is really exciting. And that's, again, I have a story on all 6, but I'll stop there. See if you have any other questions.
Yeah, so I wanted to just get clear about how much you do at the edge, because you've just given me all these reasons why I shouldn't send the data anywhere, but actually the reason that we've got a cloud is so that I can use the data somewhere else so that I can aggregate it and do, whatever. So do you not only filter but also process at the edge? I mean, how do you carve up what happens at the edge with what happens in the cloud?
Quick answer, and then my colleagues
Yeah,
can...
I mean, you could take all day answering that, I know, but, just a quick taste.
No, believe it or not, I can give a quick answer. And I want to emphasize, I didn't say in lieu of, okay? Let's just be clear, because if I quote my colleague Vernon Turner, who you probably know from IDC, he believes it's 40% of the data. That means 60 won't be processed at the edge, right? That means it has to go back to the cloud. So our point here is we offer choice. For that 40%, I believe it's higher, but he's the analyst, right? I believe it's higher. I think it's going to be a whole lot of data we process at the edge. Now, that means we don't have to send it back. We can decimate it. That's the term, right? We can process it. We can get answers. So here's a simple reason. If I want to add 100 numbers, I can send 100 numbers to the cloud, add them, and then I have my answer in the cloud. Or what can I do? I can add 100 numbers at the edge and send just the answer back. And you preserve those 7, those reasons. So I just want to emphasize very quickly, it's not either or. We offer the choice. Compute all at the edge, compute all at the cloud, or do a hybrid in between. And we're going to see a shift. We invented this. We don't have this history of computing at the edge. We invented it. So we're going to see a shift of, I didn't know you could run a machine learning algorithm at the edge. I thought it was just an Atom processor or an ARM core. No, it's 64 Xeon cores. Well, then we'll run it at the edge, right? That's what we're seeing happening. We're seeing these conversions and these lights go off.
So IoT for most people means having lights that turn on automatically or doors locking out automatically. But IoT, it's also happening on the healthcare area. So is this box HIPAA compliant, or we have to do like an extra configuration for having the device HIPAA compliant?
You want to take that?
Sure. So I think the real question about healthcare deals with privacy. It's similar to being in banking. Are you PCI compliant, et cetera? So that's going to have to do with how the data are handled, not the physical construction of this. This is not going to be washed down and run through an autoclave like something that's in an operating suite. So then the question becomes, how are we securing the data? How are the data ingested? Where are they sent? What kind of governance goes on patient data and things like that? So that's not specific to the hardware. That's specific to the way in which it's implemented, the software that's run on here, et cetera. But imagine a case where we want to pull data out of an MRI machine in real time to assess, does this machine need maintenance, for example? And there are a lot of parameters in there with the magnets and power supplies and so on. It may be much more economical to have an Edgeline server there with a bank of MRIs and CAT scans and so on, pulling the data in, ingesting it, and letting a local service engineer say, you know what, I'm seeing some anomalies here. Let's get out and look at this particular power supply or this particular interface. There's no patient data that's associated with that in this healthcare application. But those machines, any data that comes out of those machines that has imaging, that has to become HIPAA compliant. So it really depends on how you apply it. Is it purely monitoring machines? Is it processing the healthcare records internally, in which case you have the HIPAA compliant?
Actually, it's part of that. I know, I cannot say the name, but there's a hospital in Indiana who is working, monitoring all the patients through small bracelets. And they are trying to get all that information in real time so they can make decisions based on that information. I don't know exactly which platform they are using because we are just trying to get into that business. But it seems to be that they are looking for a solution specifically for monitoring those small devices. Probably it's not an MRI. Probably it's something just like a heartbeat or oxygen levels or something like that. But what I'm asking is, these boxes are ready or capable of managing that kind of level of security?
So Aruba does this all the time in terms of healthcare telemetry, heart rate monitors, infusion pumps, nurse call. These are all critical systems in hospitals. The native security that's built into Aruba infrastructure handles the privacy and the security associated with the transmission of those data. Then they're going to go into a patient record system, or they're going to go into some other. that's where you have to deal with the governance. So we securely transport the data, and in fact, Aruba goes up to classified top secret over Wi-Fi. So we do this in government applications, intelligence agencies, transferring these data securely from the source to the application, and then whatever governance rules apply to that application come into effect. So we'd be glad to talk to your to the company, because we do this with Sotera, we do this with lots of other on-body monitoring systems that are using Wi-Fi for heart rate, temperature, pulse oximetry, etc. Thank you.
So pattern analysis, part of security, part of linking analog data to our digital world. Machine intelligence, deep learning is actually a hot topic pretty much all across the industry. Can you guys talk for a little bit about what you're doing to enable that in your, or use or enable that in your applications?
So this is critical, right, to understand behavior and also detect variances to behavior. From a security perspective, that's what it does. It quantifies what is normal and tries to extract those instances that are abnormal. Now, from a policy platform perspective, as I said earlier, we do a little bit of that. We do some context. We don't do a lot of correlation and machine learning and things like that, but we apply context to our policies. We work with third parties, other products. There are the category of products that do behavioral analytics from a security perspective, that look at lateral movement, look at logs, PCAPs, flows, and ingest terabytes of data and run all their algorithms. So we partner with them. In fact, in the press release today that we announced this, there's one company called Niara that we are partnering with, and there's a whole category of them that Niara belongs to. So these are the companies that do exactly what you're saying, and when they identify something as abnormal or something is maliciously abnormal or abnormally malicious, then they send us a signal and we can take action. So we can do the enforcement. So what's going to happen as we build this out is we become the most trusted enforcement point in the network, and we work with an ecosystem of solutions that are deployed in the enterprise that do various types of behavior analytics or other types of sensing, and they all feed us this information.
So on that point about partnerships, Aruba plays well with others, because there's no one company in the industry that is the world leader in everything from machine learning to Wi-Fi. So if you want to build out the best-in-class solution, you need to partner. And so we have literally hundreds of technology companies that we partner with, some on Edgeline, some with ClearPass, some with our Meridian system, which is our location beaconing system, and some with the Aruba switching and wireless infrastructure for that very reason. Now, with regard to machine learning, depending on how complex the algorithm is, you might actually want to do that at the edge as well. So because you can scale from 1 to 64 Xeon cores, you can determine whether you want to run some small instance of software, you want to run a full instance of Vertica right at the edge to do full big data analytics. It's your choice, because these platforms can handle it.
May I just say that we touched on partnerships, and I like to trifurcate this dimension of a partnership, and I was going to ask Pete here to make a statement about that, because we have technology partners that give us solution elements, if you will, and then we have system integrator partnerships, that help us deploy and sell, and then a third one is this OEM relationship that does really neither of those two. Sometimes they do, but the point is they can be strictly some channel to market. And would you like to comment on that dimension of our partnership world?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you pretty much nailed it already, Tom, but the reason why I mentioned up front, we have a very large OEM program. We work with a lot of operational technology companies. So if you think of the Honeywells, the GEs, if you think of the Bosch, the Toshibas of this world, they're very, very good at delivering an industry-focused solution. And what we actually are trying to do is make sure that we can be the technology partner, so it's a powered by HP solution. And that really is the premise behind our OEM offering. And how that comes into play in IoT is that we see a lot of the IoT solutions as being very much partner ecosystem plays. very few companies are going to be able to cover all of the elements that are going to be necessary to deliver, for example, a complex smart city and security-based solution. And what we're trying to do is to build out that partner ecosystem. Partnering is actually in Hewlett-Packard Enterprise's DNA, and we see this as a natural extension. So we believe that those partners will not only be the integrators, the ISVs, but we also think of the operational technology companies as well. And we're building that into our standard partner framework, our partner-ready framework, so that we can make sure we are ready to work together on some of these exciting and quite complicated opportunities that IoT will throw out in the future. So yeah, we see this as absolutely critical in the way that we hope will be successful in the future.
I think that's an interesting topic as well when you talk about National Instruments and PTC, kind of collaborating with them. They're leaders in their own sections and joining our leadership as well.
Hi, Thomas Poppelgaard. Question about the partnership between Nvidia regarding IoT and then this. Is that anything you can comment on?
Yes, I can comment on everything, just for the record. Nvidia is the question. Nvidia, as you all know, I'm sure, just to level set, is a great company with GPU technology. They're excelling in many ways in the IoT. You probably already know that, which is why you asked the question. I would like to say very quickly, we use them to a great extent to complement our server offerings, for the obvious reason that GPUs and FPGAs, by the way, can complement. Now, what about the IoT? Well, it's public knowledge that they're making inroads in autonomous, vehicles, and that leads to and I'm not going to speak for them, but I'm going to speak for us, a relationship that I would like to continue to have, and a dialogue I continue to have with that company because of their great success there and their great history. The dimension of, for example, let's pick the autonomous car, which is a thing in the IoT, if you will, just from a language. You got to get small, and you have to get pervasive. So I like the term pervasive computing. And they are part of this notion of pervasive, but I don't know if they would say that, but we don't believe they can do it all. They need complementary management, complementary storage, right, and complementary open compute that's lower barriers of entry to run apps. So I see partnerships there.
But they have a platform with Tegra. Tegra is very popular for people who are designing robots or advanced, because it's very cheap but people then have to take different components and put it together, grab the data, and
it's very powerful.
Again, what you guys are doing, I think that would be a great alignment between Nvidia, Tegra, and HPE.
That's a good point. I haven't actually thought about that dimension of it, but I agree that we have to exploit partnerships because it's a critical success factor. It's not just nice. I think we already know that. I mean, look at the data center where the HPE company, excels and has been number one in many dimensions, number two in networking, number one in some of the wireless dimensions of networking, big in storage, right? We think that's complicated. That's only one part of an IoT solution, right? In fact, in my framework, that's 1/4. That whole complex thing that decades have been spent trying to figure out, with partnerships with VMware, Citrix, all the way to Microsoft. Take that data center and cloud, connect it to Edge IT, now it's complicated, connect this stuff to data acquisition and access points and gateways, and then to connect it to sensors, and then connect it to things. So now we've quadrupled, in effect, that, and therefore it's even hard to comprehend it, much less serve it all. So Pete's work with OEMs, the work we're doing, with partners, and one you're quite intimate with, Citrix, is really a big part of our world. So you're absolutely right. We'll stay in touch on what happens with Nvidia.
I think that Nvidia would be great if that could be, if Nvidia would be more interested in opening up and working together, because they are, after I've been learning, they are entering the IoT space big time now.
Yeah.
And people, the stuff they're building on Tegra is really interesting, and all the data that can be processed is perfect for all this new compute you guys have built. But I'm missing alignment still between Nvidia and HPE.
Yeah, I said I could comment on it. That didn't mean I could tell you everything I know. However, I would say that because we built this on open industry standards, one of them is PCI Express. We can plug in great technology without having to redesign. I'm getting a little technical here, the motherboard, and have a design win, if you will. Right, so we can lean very quickly. Another standard model is PXI, and that's where we have this National Instruments, data acquisition, which has, by the way, FPGA technology with LabVIEW. That can plug in. So now I can create a GPU system, a little bit like we did with Apollo for the data center, our Apollo brand. I can create an FPGA system immediately with these interfaces. And therefore, the flexibility and the openness of those standards is another thing we're bringing out to the edge, which is traditionally, my colleague here, Michael, knows, has been usually closed, and for good reason. But now we're bringing some open standards, and we can do a lot more. And Citrix is another reason why we can do that at the edge, because it's an open x86 architecture with standard I/O. You get the point.
Maybe I can add one side comment here. We've been talking a lot about the technology deep inside the servers and so on. One thing to keep in mind is that many IoT projects fail, not because of the technology, but because the technology isn't aligned with the business goals of the enterprise. So before a customer starts thinking about what architecture and products they want to use, the first thing they need to start with is what are the strategic business goals of the company? How do those translate into business objectives? So let's say I'm a retailer, for example, or a healthcare organization, since that was brought up earlier. And let's say my goal is to increase by 15% the billable hours with no increase in staff. Okay, that's tricky because staff doesn't want to work longer hours. So now I have to see how can I become more efficient as a healthcare organization. And one way to do that would be to look at how many appointments get missed. Let's say 5% or 10% of appointments go missing because people are late, they didn't get reminders, they get lost in the hospital. Well, now we can have what Gartner calls a business moment, which is the moment that the patient enters the hospital, we can engage them actively and change their behavior. Tell them, here's where your appointment is, because it may have changed, it may have moved, and here are the turn-by-turn instructions to get there. Oh, and by the way, it's multilingual. So if one of the reasons you can't get there is because you speak Spanish or you speak Chinese and all the instructions are in English. So now that's going to inform the IoT architecture. We need a location-based service. We need an app that they can download multilingual, and then ultimately that'll lead to the individual beacons or whatever is used for the location services. If we were to start with this shiny object of an IoT architecture and say, I want to jam that into that business goal, chances are it wouldn't fit. So we spend a lot of time consulting with customers talking about this transformation, but starting with the business goal and ending with the architecture and not the other way around to ensure that the product is successful or the deployment is successful.
So yeah, well, I can say I'm very excited actually about this solution you guys are doing here, because a lot of people have been waiting for the Edgeline, especially 4000. If you look at more virtualization, Citrix and Microsoft and VMware customers, where you want to add GPU capabilities, right? You don't have to pay VTAX hypervisors or Nvidia grid. You get all this raw performance. That is a huge accomplishment you guys have done. I don't know if the audience in here is aware of how big this is actually impacting how you're designing systems.
Please keep talking. We'll stay. But if I talk about it, it's like my mother calling me handsome. But you're a third party. Please continue.
No, but I'm a big fan of what you're doing with the stuff. I guess where my learning is to also, how do you combine everything with IoT? So you take all these mixed workloads and design a system. Again, within cancer treatment, right? So this is also some customers I work with. So they design the software where they want to get the GPU-enabled workloads, but how do you then combine it with all sensors and all the other stuff? Because it's a totally different new way of thinking.
Kest, you go, and I'll have the last word. Yeah.
As always, no problem. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The way we sum it up basically is when you connect the unconnected, incredible things can happen. And we are uncovering opportunities and business cases, and we're discovering great partners almost hourly, not just daily, of where we can take some of this technology. Most importantly, as Mike said earlier on, it has to deliver a business case. We're looking for customers who also are willing to find what those business cases are, early adopters perhaps, that are going to be looking at these, because I don't know if I've said it in here, I apologize, I've been in so many activities, but even if you look at some of the studies done, 1 percentage point of saving across the industry, the estimates is over $400 billion worth of savings. Just 1% of efficiencies across the industries as we know today. If you think about it, you can stretch that to the average company. Digitization agenda is going to be absolutely key, and this type of technology will enable business cases. We see that as really exciting.
So I have one thing to add actually. So imagine that all these people are making so many new innovative designs. What about reference designs? Are you guys thinking about putting out an open platform so people can go in and get it inspired, how they want to start building the different IoT systems, and also, customers that can contribute to this? So for the higher purpose of things.
Just real quick, and then we could take that one offline. But just real quick, I'm working with some large universities right now to create the Edge Computing Center of Excellence to teach programming methods about workloads that are moving out to the edge. So we're going to do an education thing, because when you create a new product category, you have to educate. So that's just a real quick answer. We'll talk more about that.
So Aruba's published validated reference designs for things like location-based services and other remote monitoring, so that our integrators, basically our customers, have something they can implement reliably. But I also wanted to come back to your point about the complexity. And there are two levels of complexity. One is the technical complexity, and the other is the political complexity within an organization to get all the stakeholders aligned, to get legal, to get operations, to get IT all aligned to say this is the direction we're going in. So our technical services consulting group, TSC, has actually put together IoT workshop for customers where they will step you through the entire IoT transformation journey and get alignment of the major stakeholders. One of the reasons why they're in a good position to do it is because it's a hot potato within an enterprise for IT to stand up and do it, or OT, because they bring a lot of baggage with them. If you have a third party come in and step them through this workshop of here are the business benefits, here are the objectives, what are the objections, and then at the end agree on the strategic direction, it makes the implementation more likely to be successful. So TSC is here. They're actually running through a small version of those workshops, and I would suggest you check them out because they're really fascinating. Every business unit in HPE came together to define those workshops to say these are the different elements that we believe are important to customers.
So I work a lot of time with developers and very young people. How they think is they go and search themselves. You got to put out the information out there and don't be relying on services.
No, let's just agree. I agree. You say young people, did you just say? Yes.
I'm not young.
No, we have posted all our reference architectures on Instagram. Okay. For the millennial. All right, you got the joke. Let me just say, absolutely, we announced 7 new solutions on here with white papers and that sort of thing. We'll follow up. We do have to stop, right? So can I leave you with this thought? Let's say this room represents everything about IoT. This business card represents what we know today. And this period on the card represents what my competitors know. My point there is we haven't even discovered what we're going to do when we enter new products like this and new technologies from Aruba. It's going to be exciting. We're going to just change the world of the edge, and we're going to build the edge. A good company follows the trends. A great company sets the trends. And our team wants to be the great company that's setting them. So with that, we dismiss everyone. And thank you for being here.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.